Minister, the Cork Life Centre on Winters Hill, Cork is a one-of-a-kind institution. It's a voluntary organisation offering an alternative learning environment to marginalised young people. The centre and its staff often offer one-to-one tuition in junior cert and leaving cert subjects, but for the staff of the Life Centre, value is placed on the social education just as much as the academic. The centre focuses on fostering positive relationships between students and staff. Supports are continuously offered to students with regards to any challenges they might face inside the school environment or at home and in the students' community. The centre is not officially recognised as an alternative educational facility, and funding up to recently has been minimal. I do note the extra supports that you have provided as Minister, primarily through one-off funding from the social inclusion section of your department and through much improved provision of cooperation hours in conjunction with Cork ETB. I also commend you for your visit to the centre during the summer, and I understand you were greatly impressed by all that you experienced during your visit. So to the point of my topical question tonight, Minister, you and I are both qualified teachers. You and I are both registered with the Teaching Council and received payment commensurate with our qualifications. That's fair and right. The same isn't being afforded to many of the staff in the Life Centre. Many of the staff there are not paid a rate commensurate with their qualifications or their experience. Some of these people have master's degrees, others have a lifetime working with children with exceptional needs and students that come from very challenging backgrounds. I believe it is time, Minister, that those suitably qualified working within that organisation have that reflected in their terms and conditions and in their pay packets. It's not appropriate for this to continue. Minister, since your elevation to office, you have been a very progressive Minister for Education, initiating the school transport review, something that was ignored by successive ministers before you. Record spending in special education now amounting to €2.7 billion, and most recently in the budget you committed to €5 million to be diverted to counselling services in schools. The regularisation of qualified teaching staff pay and conditions at the Cork Life Centre could be another progressive footnote in that series of achievements, and I beg you to consider it in the interest of fairness and equality in the workplace. And I suppose, look, back in 2013, when I was lucky enough to buy my first house, I found it incredibly difficult to get a mortgage at that time. I was still a temporary teacher, I had no permanency, and I can understand the difficulties that many in the Life Centre are facing at the moment. To get a mortgage, let alone a car loan, would be quite difficult in the current environment. So I do believe that it's something that we need to look at. It needs to be dealt with, and I'd welcome the Minister's response in regard to that.
And I wish to thank the Deputy for his question and indeed his ongoing interest in this particular Cork Life Centre. As the House will know, the Centre in Sundays Well caters for young people who have encountered challenges in completing mainstream education. The Centre is one of a number of such alternative education providers nationally. The Department of Education has provided funding to Cork Life Centre for the last number of years, with that support increasing significantly since 2018. In 2022, the Department of Education will provide funding of €177,500, as well as 6,000 cooperation hours in conjunction with the Department of Further and Higher Education. In June of last year, as the Deputy has alluded to, I was fortunate enough to visit the centre and have the opportunity to meet with young people who attend the centre, their parents and guardians, staff from the centre and the management of the centre. And I do want to concur with the Deputy in that I was truly impressed with the opportunity to engage, and particularly to have an opportunity to engage directly with the Centre's young people and listen to them and hear from them of their experience at Cork Life Centre, which I want to articulate in the positive. It really was a positive engagement from their point of view. During that meeting, the Centre raised the issue of security of employment for their staff and terms and conditions, including payment rates for their teaching staff. Staff employed in Cork Life Centre under the cooperation hours arrangements by Cork Education and Training Board are employed under terms and conditions, including pay scales, in line with arrangements which apply for settings which are outside the recognised school system. It is not unusual generally that tutors may hold qualifications that entitle them to recognised teacher status or registration with the Teaching Council, but payment rates, terms and conditions are generally dependent upon the setting or sector in which a person is actually employed. A commitment was given to examine the circumstances around the payment of teachers at Cork Life Centre. I am committed to honouring that agreement through the review of out-of-school education provision. The review of out-of-school education provision was carried out by a working group comprised of representatives from stakeholders, including the Department of Education, the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, TUSLA, SOLAS, Education and Training Boards Ireland and the National Educational Psychological Service. The report on the review was published in May of 2022. The review finds that out-of-school education settings are providing an important role in relation to maintaining contact with education and supporting well-being for a key cohort of learners who have encountered challenges in mainstream settings through adopting a holistic approach based around the individual. However, approaches to the education curriculum, certification and education pathways for students are very dependent on what can be provided for in each particular setting. The Cork Life Centre is seeking sustainability for the future, and this is what the review of out-of-school education provision aims to provide for the entire sector as a whole. It is intended that implementation of the report's recommendations will include developing criteria for structures, governance and level of education provision, including scoping out costs associated for such settings, providing education for students who have encountered difficulties completing mainstream education. And the work in relation to the implementation is ongoing at present, and it is up and running. I wish to confirm that to the House.
Minister, look, I do welcome the investment that you have put into the Life Centre over the last few years. As you've detailed there, it's €177,500, as well as the 6,000 cooperation hours. So look, that's not in dispute, and that is greatly welcomed by all at the Life Centre, including Don and Rachel. Look, I do welcome the commitment that you've given in terms of honouring the agreement you say here through the review out of school education provision. So if you could just give me some clarity in your supplementary, you know, are we looking at that review concluding this year, next year, or how long will that review process take? I think that would be important. As you've kind of intimated in your answer, the issue here is about the sustainability of the Life Centre into the future and other institutions like it right across the country. So I think, you know, it would give people great peace of mind if they thought that the conclusion to that process was going to happen soon. And look, I'd just like to leave you with a comment that was made by the UCC President John O'Halloran in relation to the Life Centre recently when he conferred an honorary doctorate on Don O'Leary. He described him as a true pioneer of education and a champion for those who can flourish outside a mainstream school setting, given the right opportunity. And he went on to say that staff here at UCC have seen firsthand the work Don has put in to ensure that no child is left behind. Minister Don and his team at the Cork Life Centre can only continue in that vein with the appropriate staffing, and the longer we delay on a lasting solution for the Life Centre and their counterparts, the worse the outcomes will be. So look, I think time is of the essence here, and I think you're well aware of that, and I do welcome your commitment. And if you could just give clarity around when that review might conclude.
Thank you, Deputy and Pádraig. Just to reiterate that I am determined to ensure that the implementation of the recommendations of the review of the out-of-school education provision will allow all children and young people to be supported throughout their education and to achieve their fullest potential. The review is successfully completed, and we have now moved on to the implementation process, and the work on that has already begun. I'm very keen to see progress made in relation to the implementation of the recommendations of the report. In the interim, the level of funding currently provided to Cork Life Centre will continue, and indeed, as you have reiterated yourself, Deputy, that does amount to €177,500, as well as quite substantial 6,000 cooperation hours, which are being provided in conjunction with the Department of Education. And so, until such time as the recommendations of the report are implemented, this funding will be in place and will provide ongoing support for the centre. And I will also commit to you that the Department will continue engagement with Cork Life Centre to determine a framework for sustainability for the centre and its staffing. Sustainability for the future, as you're aware, Deputy, is what Cork Life Centre have requested. It's what they are seeking, and indeed it is what the review of the out-of-school education provision aims to provide for the sector as an entire whole, including Cork Life Centre. The body of work to advance the implementation of the recommendations is now underway, and that will be completed as soon as we possibly can. But there is an absolute commitment that that will include, as I have said to you, looking at many of the issues that you have already raised. Thank you, Deputy.